Welcome everybody to this week's special interview. It's not an interview. We're like a trifecta here of awesome. Because he decided to do this today, I wrote a little song.
Who's he?
This is John Paul Boucher, but he's just going by John Boucher. If you want to buy a house, this is the guy. All right, see, I promoted you. Now I get to sing this song.
You have the inestimable Reagan Reed.
Inestimable Reagan Reed.
And the melodious Robert Code.
Yes.
Melodious.
Yes, thank you for that one. So this is called the Boucher song. And I wanted to go out and we're not going to do the whole thing because it's too much. There's a lot of good lyrics, but we're going to go for it.
I want to hear the whole thing.
No!
We got time?
No.
Give us the whole
Maybe
thing.
we'll do it next week.
I don't know why I'm
we'll
here.
Flush it out. It'll be good. Anyway, a lot of people say a lot of negative crap about John. About all of us. About all of us,
We
you
have
know.
haters?
We have haters,
Hey,
man.
y'all talk about my wife, and I'm just.
We're not, yeah, get ready for the
Will.
Will Smith slap, right? Yeah. Ready? No Will Smith slap from you, Boucher. We're gonna go for it. This is the Boucher song. Let me start off the show with a tribute to a very good conservative, my friend, John Paul Boucher. Ready? Boucher, oh Boucher. People talk about him every day. They tell lies, he accepts it anyway. Boucher, here's what they say. He's a radical Muslim and he's super gay. Radical Muslim who is super gay, 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 gay. He's super gay. According to the haters, the haterade. Drinking that haterade. That's all I'm gonna do right now anyway. That's the
Thank
bone.
you.
See, I'm a producer and writer of music. I write good songs. But I know John Boucher could take this up and make a hit out of the Boucher
But he
song.
won't.
Billy's looking like, no.
But he won't.
I take it back, Bob. I don't want to hear the rest of the lyrics.
No, that was funny, people. He's a
a
radical
radical
Muslim and he's super gay. Those are some of the crap they said about you, John.
I know.
They said worse about
they
Reagan.
They still say.
He's living on a farm somewhere.
Someone called me like the Nazi youth.
Yeah,
remember
that's
that.
always
I remember
fun.
that. I did want to clear something up though before we get
Yes,
started.
sir.
Every time I talk with Reagan and we're on the show, he always says, "You have regrets about not having a better relationship with Wally, brother." But let me just disabuse you of something. That wasn't on you, man. You did go to Wally. You did try and do that. That wasn't your choice, man. So let's get that out
Always
the way.
do more.
We're going down the Wally Road. I saw Wally last time, and he was like this. He was like, had his arms out because I went to that thing that you don't like, the Montgomery County Republican Club. I went there, and I'm like, I'm going.
Rhino.
Me and Reagan are rhinos. Don't hate on us for that.
No, just have one party. That's all. But anyway.
Okay, so we're done with the song. I'm gonna put this guitar. I'm gonna hand this over to Billy so he doesn't freak out and I bust in the song.
Quick, shut the door. Shut the door.
Yeah. Put that away. All right.
So is this an intervention? I'm surrounded by you two guys. Y'all asked me to be here today.
I mean,
No.
yeah, John, we're very concerned about Bob.
Yeah. Concerned about me losing it. Listen, that was funny. I thought I'd do something different. That's why we call Rock the Boat, man, because we're doing different stuff. We're creative.
We're rocking
people.
it today.
That's
You
what we
definitely-
definitely have.
You won't hear that anywhere else for sure.
All right.
For sure.
Now, let's get into some issues that
Okay.
we're having. I saw you. I was suited up, not look like I'm going to on some bad sailboat somewhere. I saw you at the Republican convention, the SD4
Yep.
in the Woodlands, and I don't like the big convention, I'll be honest with you. I miss the convention that me and Reagan had, because our convention was what, Reagan?
Two of
Well,
you.
it was small. so Bob, you're saying you'd rather be
So we're back to talking about super gay? Is that what we're-
No, dude,
So
come
you'd
on,
rather-
man.
you'd rather be like a big fish in a little pond than a little fish in a big pond?
No, I'm a big fish wherever I go. And then it was like, I just couldn't stand what I was seeing, some of the stuff, because it seemed of ill preparedness. Reagan, were we prepared for our convention?
Not until about 3 days before the convention
So
started.
what? 3 days before is good, okay? Me and John walked in the resolutions committee, and I just was like, dude, no, we can't do this. We gotta go. And I'm like, we gotta get out of here, because this was bugging me. Some of the stuff I was reading in the resolutions was like, this is half-baked stuff.
Like QAnon stuff?
No, almost as bad, but John, I don't know if he's gonna wanna talk about this. Come on, let's rock the boat. What was the problem
Maybe John
with
is
some of
Q.
the, maybe your Q?
well, I'm supposedly queer, so I guess I don't know. No, so I was on the resolutions committee. In fact, I was the
Right.
vice chair of the resolutions committee. And,
Okay.
and when you get a committee that's over, say, 6 or 7, 8 people, it gets a little bit unwieldy, really. So what we'd have is, we put a resolution up on the board that would say something like, we call on the Republican Party to respect the First Amendment. I mean, it would be that vague. And we would say, well, I mean, we already have First Amendment protection in the Constitution.
Where's the action item?
The party already has this in the platform, so why are we having this? And somebody would inevitably say, Reagan, well, we should put it in there just to state that we affirm it. And then the next one would come up, and they would say, we're against abortion. And we'd say, well, that's the same argument. No,
already
we
got
don't
it.
need to put that, it's already in the platform. So you end up with this whole mixed bag of things in the resolutions deal, and there was still resolutions coming at 11 o'clock that night. So what we're doing now
Oh,
is
man.
we're putting together, we had a meeting of the leadership from SD4. I've always had a problem with this. Every 2 years, we show up like we've never had a convention before.
Yeah.
So I had this crazy idea to have a box for each senatorial district, put all the ideas in it, put all the proper forms in it, so that every 2 years, we hand it to the guy running it and saying, here's everything you need. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. This is easy. Here's the structure, how it goes. And it's a lot easier. And then you can tweak upon that and keep improving instead of having to go back and recreate everything. So we did start that process. So hopefully it'll be better in 2 years.
So here's
Good
a
answer.
novel. Here's a novel idea for your box. This is one for the box.
Jeez.
So at the SD3 convention in 2020,
Okay.
the resolutions chairman then, who crazy guy, I don't know what kind
Oh,
of
that guy.
I don't know what kind of crazy convention chairman made that.
Rhino Deluxus is a song I'm writing right
Okay.
now about him, man.
The resolution committee for SD3 last time met a few days before the convention. So you're
Correct.
not meeting the day of the convention.
We did
rushing
that.
this before.
We did that.
We met before.
But we
then
were
the general-
finalizing.
Well, but then the general guiding principle was, if it's already in the platform, chunk
Yeah.
it. And we only stuck to like new ideas, and so we tweaked all the potential language, any potential problems in the resolution, any spelling problems or
Yes.
punctuation errors.
Yes.
And we fixed that all, so then going into convention, we just had a little debate, but it went very smoothly. What'd you say, Bob?
I think so. I think that SD4 has more issues because they're larger.
That's
so they
right.
got to be organized ahead of time, way ahead of of we were. But we also didn't want to send up things that weren't possibly going to ever make it. You know what I mean? Resolutions that were completely vague. I call them affirmation resolutions, like Jesus is our Lord.
Yeah.
What?
Well,
Okay.
that was one of the ideas that I put forth after. So we should take all those resolutions that are affirmation, put them at the front, just vote on them en masse.
Like a consent agenda.
Yeah, consent agenda.
Well, on those, you just say, these are already in the platform. There they are up on the screen. You can read them for yourself.
Yeah.
I make a motion to approve them as written so we can move on to the new stuff to debate it. Because, again, it's not like it was in your deal. I don't know how many people you had on your committee.
Yeah, maybe 70.
But we had, well, total, not on your committee. On your committee.
Oh, the
you had-
committee was like
Oh,
what?
five.
Like 5 or 6, 7?
Yeah, and we had a room full of people, and as I said, one would get real passionate about something.
Too many
and then
people.
7 people would vote for it, and then we're wasting time. I mean, we started the first one, and I made the comment, because there was this debate going back and forth. I said, we got 148 or whatever of these things on this list. There's a whole nother stack of them here we haven't even touched yet, and we just spent 15 minutes on the first one. We got to
Why'd
move
you
on,
spend
guys.
15 minutes on
Because
one?
everybody has a story about some place they did something or heard something or experienced with something. So I'm okay with the affirmation stuff, but let's just move through them, put them at the front, approve them as written, and move on, and then get to the substantive stuff that we can debate that's going to make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what were there any contentious resolutions that were brought up?
Well, there was one that was contentious, but it shouldn't be. It's already planked 252 or 225, whatever, the Republican Party platform, which is
Impressed you
having
know that.
having the CEC elect the county chairman in counties of 70,000 or more. And I mean, that makes sense when you have an open primary right now, Reagan, and you have Democrats voting for Republican leadership. That's just what we call stupid. or when you have a group outside that can put a bunch of money up and misrepresent themselves to an uneducated electorate and get somebody elected that doesn't know what the hell they're doing, that's a problem too.
Or you have the Rob Morrow situation.
Right,
Where you have somebody
right.
who has a
Who's
better
a
ballot
lunatic.
name,
Yeah.
gets elected and shows up with a court jester hat to the
Yeah,
vote seat.
and the
Oh, he
Republican
did that.
Party,
Yeah, that's
and the
right.
Republican Party elects its leadership at their convention. So
Right.
having the CEC, which is this little private organization, select its own leadership would cut down on a lot of the contentiousness in the party. I mean, it would be a whole lot less divisive. They would get better leadership. They'd all be on the same page. There's this thing called a verbal contract you'll learn about in leadership classes, where you sit down with people and you say, what do you expect from me in this position? And they tell you, and you say, okay, I'll do that. I will do all that, but here's what I need from you. And it's a verbal contract. You can't do that when you bring in somebody from the outside into a body that knows nothing about anything, that has negative relationships.
Well, that's the way
with
I
a lot
felt
of
like the attendees, but that's another story. But honestly, what kind of percentage of the state has that model? Do we have a kind of a breakdown by county? There's 254 counties in Texas. How many of those counties probably just have their in their bylaws? How many of them? Is there any rough estimate?
I have no idea. I just know it made it to the platform, so it had to be substantial.
Reagan, what?
Zero.
What do you mean?
It's not a bylaw thing, it's a state law thing.
Yeah.
It's a state law. It's supposed to be that. See, that's why I was
State law is that you elect the county chair in the primary. So it's not up to the discretion of the individual county. So in the whole state, it is done by primary.
Well, I thought you were saying how many parties have this put forth to make it to the platform. So yeah, he's correct.
So it's a state law that
Yeah.
the county executive committee of each county in Texas, that's the law, supposed to.
But
what? Let me go
But
ahead.
it's also, there's also a Supreme Court ruling, Democrat Party of San Francisco versus, I think it's VU was the last name.
Oh, I know that case.
That said any state law that seeks to interfere with the organization operation of a political party is considered null and void. So really, I mean, the party of the Republican Party could come in and say, you're out of here, and that person would have to take it all the way to the Supreme Court and they would lose, because there's already a precedent set for that. So state law right now does conflict with your freedom of association and a political party's ability to organize right now. So that needs to be corrected. Hopefully we'll get that done this legislature.
See, that's why it's important, like, for certain people to go up there who have expertise. But when certain people go up there, like on certain issues, now if I go up there on election integrity, I got all the paper ballot people
Oh, we
and
had
all the
somebody call
electronic
everybody
fraud.
an idiot at our deal. Can you believe that?
Oh,
We had
yeah,
somebody
yeah.
go to the mic and call everyone an idiot.
I did it.
I have no idea who that
I
would
did
be.
it. I didn't call everybody an idiot. I said idiocy, but it came out.
I agree with you, Bob. If somebody wants to go back to paper ballots or thinks there were 20,000 fraudulent votes in Montgomery County, I mean, idiot is the only word that you can use.
Dude, I did an audit of a couple months ago. This lady had the temerity to go up there and
The
just
opinions expressed
ramble.
by these two guys are theirs and theirs alone.
She had the temerity to go up there and ramble and say, there's never any audits performed. My producer has gone with me to perform an audit, and he's like the most honest dude I know. So don't go up there and lie. My blood was starting to boil.
See what I did?
And I mean,
Starting to boil now. Just like it is now.
see, he's riling me up, but I mean, I'm in a happy mood,
Triggered.
but I'm triggered, man. The idiocy that I saw there, and I will say it, was monumental because one person said there was never an audit performed. She was basing it off an article that was based on federal guidelines. They're not laws. They're not anything. They are federal guidelines used by California and Connecticut. Oh, I really want to follow that. Some ballot harvesting.
Should we have closed primaries in Texas?
I'll take it a
I
step
think so.
farther, John. I think we shouldn't even have primaries at all.
Oh,
Okay.
you're going there.
No, I'm a big proponent, and I'll throw this out there. It was not until relatively recently, about mid-1900s, that we even had primaries at all. Back in the good old days,
True.
everything was decided by convention. You had stronger parties back then, and so rather than this being voted on in these open primaries, you had the most involved people, the most invested people of the party
Look at it.
were making these decisions, and were picking who was going to be the strongest nominee and the best representative of the party's brand. And
The back room.
as we've gone away from this model, now we have weak parties. The parties have no ability to, really exert any kind of influence or protect their brand. And so, yeah, I think we get rid of primaries altogether.
That'd be brilliant. Then we'd elect that stalwart conservative Beto O'Rourke. Because they can say anything, and we already know we have an uneducated electorate, so
But-
that
but
would be the
hold on,
problem.
let me push
No,
back on
keep
that.
going. Like,
How-
let's fight it out. Come
How
on.
does
Food fight.
Republicans picking their nominee at convention lead to Beto O'Rourke? You're saying Beto
Oh,
would become a
you
Republican.
switched
What are talking about?
you switched topics on me. I'm saying general, getting rid of primaries.
Yeah.
Right.
Where at least there's that one other step in the process where Republicans can come out and support the most Republican person.
Right.
If you just go to a general election and you have some clown show up and say, hey, we're the Republican voters of Texas, we're having Beto O'Rourke as our stalwart conservative candidate. By the time the election's over and people figured out this guy's an idiot, we'd have the guy in
No,
office.
John, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm
You said
saying
get rid of primaries.
I'm saying get rid of primaries, and you would nominate your ticket at the at state convention. The way that you pick, the way that you elect the SRACs.
They have done that in the
The
past.
way that you elect the SRACs or the
Yeah.
RPT chairman.
Yeah.
You select your nominees at a convention instead by the delegates instead of doing a primary.
I actually like that.
Yeah.
I do too.
And that's the way that it was. until
Glenn Youngkin.
Very recently. And that's why we have Glenn Youngkin, okay?
Yes.
Because Virginia went back to getting their nominee at a convention. They didn't have a primary. And had you had a primary, some wackadoo would have won it and lost the general election.
That's a good
to
point.
Jeremy
I could
Collins.
be persuaded on that. I think that's a good idea.
I want to speak about Steve actually spoke after I spoke.
Steve
and-
who?
Steve Toth. And Steve came up to me. He's like, I'm not going to say what he said, but he was in agreement with me. I won't say about what. Not that thing that I shout out because, look, I've had people, and I got to explain my frustration. Can you give me a second, folks, here? I have had a couple thousand letters, emails, phone calls about election integrity, and they're all wildly over the map, and 90% of them are what? Conspiracy theories about what happened. Do I listen to them? Yes. But if you can't present me a fact basis for your conjecture or a source document, a computer, electronic data log, and stuff like that, I get people still saying, well, let's perform a full forensic audit in the state of Texas. And I'm like, what if you don't have the electronic data log? Me and Jonathan Houlihan have often discussed this. What if you don't have the electronic data log in major counties in Texas because they all get exceptions to production of the documents that are required and the electronic documents required? You can't do it, people. And they don't have do you think they have, I'm going to ask Boucher this, do you think they have the will and the will in the legislature to actually perform full forensic audits after an election? Do you think they would pass that with the way the
I don't think it should be that way anyway. I think there should be triggers to trigger an audit. I think there should be random samplings of areas across the state. When I was an auditor, I would show up in a market. I wouldn't tell anybody I was coming. I wouldn't tell them what days I was checking. I would just pull random samples, and if I found some things that were outliers, then I would go deeper. If there's a trigger where you notice, like in some of these states where you had more voters turn out than were registered, that would be a
Right.
trigger to do a full forensic audit on that particular box.
Right.
You wouldn't have to do a full forensic audit on the whole state. I think there's a waste of money, it's a waste of time, and it's a solution in search of a problem. I don't think that's a good way to go.
that was a great answer. But most people don't think like that. They just think, let's just do it, caution be damned. But I will say
You're
this.
never going to eliminate all fraud. If there's a vote going on, there's going to be the potential for fraud. You're never going to eliminate all that.
Well, one of the things they did do with the legislature, and I want to give them props on this, Reagan, the numbers of people who are making applications for absentee ballots in mostly urban areas is way down because they require, like Reagan, they have the voter ID, a social security card, some kind of voter ID number, and there's only maybe one or two more. If you don't have one of these 3 or 4 things, you don't even get an application for mail.
Well, look, I support more verification for mail-in ballots because even though I don't think the election was stolen, but there is a small amount of fraud, and most of it happens
I do.
in the mail.
By mail. Yeah.
And so the idea of just like you have to have a photo ID when you show up at a polling place, you should have stronger verification for mail-in ballots. But I will say this, even though I support that as a matter of policy, I want you to think about this, okay?
All right.
If we're having really high rejections of mail-in ballots, okay, and again, I support the law, so I just, okay.
They're about 30%.
Well, who mostly requests mail-in ballots? It's mostly elderly people.
Yeah, and they're most likely to vote Republican.
Who do they vote for?
Yeah.
Republicans. So in a way, you could have the unintended consequence of actually suppressing. You want to talk about voter suppression? You could have the unintended consequence of actually suppressing the Republican vote, especially if you have these elderly people that may not understand changes to the process because they've always done it a certain way.
Well,
And so you got to be sure to educate that and just
Jump in,
be
John.
careful you're not
Tap
suppressing
in,
your own
John.
vote.
I know you're
one of
waiting.
the resolutions that was put forth was somebody said, we need to adopt the Wisconsin model. And nobody knew what that was. And the Wisconsin, if you were paying attention, just said over 200,000 illegal votes they uncovered. So I don't know that their system is working so good that you would adopt it.
But there's
so-
no evidence for that.
Okay, so anyway, so somebody stood up and said, well, that's where you have somebody helping the older people fill out their ballots at the old folks home. I said, oh, you mean at ballot harvester? Because that's what they are
Yeah.
at that point. So there's a lot to be said, but look, there's a lot of unintended consequences that conservatives like us have when we start voting for things to give the government more control. It's alarming to me when the Defense of Marriage Act passed and all conservatives stood up and said, yeah, and I'm like, why would you cede this power of the government to determine what a marriage is? You know,
Should have never been a
when they're talking
government
about the
thing.
sexual orientation thing, we want you to make a ruling, government, on what a male and a female is. Hell no, I don't want them to make a
No.
ruling, because tomorrow they could change that ruling. And you know, I've been swimming against a stream. Look, I even got a message from a Democrat the other day. Said, I see you're fighting with everybody. You're mad with you and Toth and Keogh and people you're normally aligned with. And my thing, Reagan, you've known me long enough. If you're wrong, I'm going to say you're wrong. If you're right, I'm going to support you. The taxpayer-funded lobbying thing I've been getting a lot of heat about. Now, as conservatives, are we against taxpayer-funded lobbying?
In
Or-
general.
Or
In the abstract.
it's misstated. Or are we against non-consensual taxpayer-funded lobbying that subjugates the taxpayer and has a negative and adverse effect? on
platform
us?
Speaking of old people, you
Because
just
it's
got
too wrong to lie.
You got a bunch of old people down with
what.
what you just said. I love that that string of sentence. I'm going to play that back later. You basically put together a sentence there that old people and anybody else, you'd have to like have a thesaurus, John. I appreciate you, buddy.
The platform doesn't differentiate.
It doesn't. You're right.
No.
But it should. And I'm going to
Well,
tell you.
that would be a resolution.
Yeah, and well, the only resolution I wrote myself was for
was it?
our legislators to present themselves to their local Republican parties before the legislative session to review what the legislative priorities are of the party, and to have them present themselves at the legislative session to talk about the successes they had and the reasons and excuses that we didn't pass the legislative
Accountability.
priorities. That's what it's called, accountability. So those are, but back to the taxpayer-funded lobbying thing. I don't think it's an unintended consequence that you're giving this to the government to decide whether this is correct or not, to make a ruling on this. Because listen, if I lived in a neighborhood and they were building a dog food factory next to me, and our zoning ordinances said they couldn't do it, and we were fighting them on it, but they sent lobbyists to Austin to change the legislation to where we were going to get screwed, and we came together to city council and said, we need to hire a lawyer too to go help us fight this. And they go, oh, we can't do that. It's against taxpayer
Yeah.
lobbying. There are unintended consequences to these things that we do. We need to think deeper about these.
You're right. And when you have like those kind of situations which are totally unique, what happens is then you've disarmed yourself. And like the thing I wrote for Reagan about Lone Star versus San Jacinto River Authority, really without a lobbyist, without lawyers, and how is Lone Star going to fight the behemoth of SGR8? They're not going to be able to effectively. And people go, well, they have smart people who are on that board, like Harry Hardman, John Boucher. They should go up there.
And we do.
And you do, and I know you do. So that's not why they're there. They're there to work out and have relationships and understand what different people are seeking, and it's complex. It's not something that one person can do. And I know from City of Conroe, Toby was against some of the state reps because he said, I'm not giving up having a lobbyist in Austin. Here's why: because if this comes down, then I'm disarmed against this group. If this comes down, then I'm disarmed. It's like until the state law changes and it passes the governor's signature, you really can't get rid of taxpayer
Well, and
dollars.
the real question, I think, in all of this debate is how, when Republicans have controlled all three
Amen.
Yes.
branches of government in the state of Texas
Yes.
for years now, and this
Hallelujah.
is not just in the platform, but it's one of the top legislative priorities.
Been saying.
How has a ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying not passed the Republican legislature? That's the question we need to be asking.
Yep.
Yep.
It's almost like they don't understand what the word priority means, isn't it?
No,
They don't understand what the word.
they don't. I mean,
They don't
how many
care.
passed this
They don't
legislative
care.
session? Like two? Two passed? Is that it?
Well, I even got a lot of heat for bristling
And that was
about
good.
the constitutional carry bill, because anything that interferes with or seeks to restate the Second Amendment, I have a problem with, because again, you're giving the nose of the camel under the tent. And I said, when they debated this in Austin, somebody should have said, as to the Second Amendment, we concur. Bam, done. We didn't have to write a 36-page bill of restrictions of where you can carry guns and can't carry guns. I thought it was stupid. I still think it's stupid.
I agree. I mean, that just seems like, they're not even following the text of the Second Amendment.
But saying that as a conservative, everybody go, oh my God, John's against constitutional carry. No, I'm in
No, you're
favor of
not.
constitutional carry.
You're not against
I've heard
all
a
these
lot more wild
situations.
things about you. So.
Oh, yeah.
I've spread probably most of them, so some of them are probably true.
John,
Flood the zone.
now you go to the state capitol. I haven't seen you in Commissioner's Court lately. Have you heard about the $80 million from Audubon? Have you heard about that?
I heard you went and testified about that. The commissioner's court is I don't know. I'll be back. I'll be going back more when Matt Gray takes office, because it just seemed like a show at this point. We got a consent agenda that's a mile long that you don't get to vote on, and then Riley walks in with these other two guys and they vote in mass every time. So it's a foregone conclusion. I'm not wasting my day going to commissioner's court.
All right. But have you ever experienced?
Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't
Hey,
say.
I
I'm
don't
not going to
think
say you're
I
wrong.
actually don't think I've been since they threw me off the ethics committee.
Really? You
This is
haven't?
a kangaroo
You haven't?
Court. I'm done with you people.
Dude.
I don't think I have.
The greatest quote about that was, "We put Reagan on that because we thought he'd be unethical," and
What?
somebody said that he misspoke. I'm like, I don't think so. I think that's
I
really
think
what
that's
Matt meant when he
like,
said that.
like
Yeah.
trap you, yeah, like
Freudian
set you
slip.
up. No, I remember, those guys. Oh, Charlie Riley. I have barely said 3 words to that man, and
That's about the-
I've been around the guy a bunch.
Yeah.
And here's my thing: I try to be nice to people. And the myth. Let me tell you the myth of Boucher. You want to hear the myth of John Boucher?
Which one?
That I know is not true. That there's 2 main ones. That he's not inclusive, right? And he's unbending. And I have not experienced that, because first day I was at CEC, we kind of you and Dale got together, we hammered out something, and everybody else sitting around as usual, and pathetic. But you always seem to, and I heard that you basically went to some people to try to get them involved in the party, and they were kind of rejecting
Nominated
it.
them.
Nominated them. I mean, so a lot of the narrative about you is that you're too boisterous, you're not inclusive, and it's my way or the highway.
Guilty on the boisterous thing.
Yeah.
Guilty on, I have what the French call a joie de vivre, or what you in Texas would call a joie de vivre. I try and have a good time in life, and I try and treat people the way that they want to be treated. But I hear all kinds of crazy stuff about me. It's actually entertaining to me to read the stupid stuff that people say sometimes. So whatever.
Well, in my defense, I get upset like you this way, John, when people start lying. And I have on this show.
You've ever been lied about, Reagan?
Never.
Yeah.
No, but when it's demonstrably a lie and people keep repeating a lie, or they're spreading misinformation and trying to diminish people through lying, I got a real problem with that.
Can I tell you what's encouraging though?
Tell me.
So I got asked to run for the vice chair of the party. Wasn't really my True Hollywood story, but when called, when called, I serve, you know, just like the water board, just like other things
Yeah.
that I've stepped up to serve for and done. Because of the big paycheck, of course.
Oh, yeah, you get so much on there.
Yeah, vice chair really needs to pay.
Yeah, so I stepped up to do that, and I reluctantly did it, and because I knew I could contribute and help the party, and I think I am.
Yeah.
And so the night of the CEC meeting, when the election took place, we had about a 55 to 45 advantage in voting. And so we did a secret ballot. I got over 70% of the vote. So what that's telling me is that there's people on that side of the liars and the lied to, that some of the lied to are figuring all this out pretty quickly. And so that's very encouraging to me.
Well, being inclusive, I think, is the thing that most people wouldn't realize that. And you don't advertise that, but I know that you've asked people on the other side. What they tell you to do is they're always like, he's talking too much about the RBT. Well, in my experiences at the polls this time,
That's the cancer, dude.
my experience is they were doing it again.
Yep.
They were doing it again, basically going, this is the Republican slate, don't say anything.
Yep.
And it was purely associational, and they whispered,
It's called lying. But
yeah.
Well, so can I ask something about that?
Yeah.
So we talk about resolutions, and so we passed the resolution about the RBT a few years ago, even back when I was
Yep.
still on the executive committee, and I voted for it. And generally, I agree with the thrust of what the resolution said, although I'd word things a little differently. Okay, but I see the CEC just keeps debating this again and again, and keeps bringing up more and more resolutions. And so my question is, do those resolutions, what does that actually accomplish in regards to, if you want the RBT to stop using the Republican name, how do passing resolutions, get them to stop?
Or is there a legal way to get them to stop?
Okay, first of all, there's not
That's a
going
hard
to be
question.
legality. That's not what
There's
it's
no
about. It's like if you go back to the fight with Wally way back when, there were people like you and myself that we were methodical in taking this through the proper process to preserve the party and preserve harmony in the party and take it to fruition at the state party, because that was the place it needed to be settled. We did that. In the midst of, if you remember, they were going out, giving interviews to papers, putting misinformation out there everywhere, and trying this in the court of public opinion. Their whole idea was to cause as much turmoil in the party as they could to try and make us submit and stop prosecuting this matter that they were wrong about. And they lost. So you ask about the RBT. No, it's not about using the word Republican, and that's not, I know they
Really?
keep trying to.
Because
Hold
that
on.
might be.
Hold on, it's about the way they use the word Republican. You have Republican women's groups, you have hundreds of groups that use the word Republican.
Right.
That don't show up at the poll and say, here's the Republican voter guide, and take advantage of an uninformed electorate, which is what they do.
Yeah.
And the founder of that, I said, y'all need to change the name, and they go, but that name works for us. That's how it works for them, because the voter doesn't know any better.
Go ahead.
So that's the issue. So the passing the resolution in 2018, you have this lag time now where, again, they dealt with that, and now they come back this election cycle, they do the same exact thing, and you call them out on it, and you go, well, you can't say anything because that was last biennium, it doesn't count. And then if you pass another resolution, they got guys like you saying, why y'all keep beating on this thing?
I got a
Y'all have already
resolution.
done this. So
I got a resolution on
you
this.
have
This
to.
is a good one, and I would make this part of the bylaws. We should all have a sign for the Republican Party at every polling
Yes.
place that says this: the Republican Party does not endorse in primary elections. Anyone who says this is the official Republican Party endorsements are not telling you the truth. Something along those lines. And then,
Just the first sentence. 'Cause
well,
it was that
whatever.
long,
But
no
you know
one
what?
can
I think a lot of people don't even know
Yeah,
what that
exactly.
means.
DJ
They don't know what it means. When you are, if this is the Republican Party's primary endorsements, you don't have a primary because they're already picked.
Precinct 103 Chairman DJ Fikes put forth a resolution, said just that. Didn't mention the RBT, didn't mention any group. It just said the Republican Party does not endorse, and we want to put that forward. And the RBT screamed like hell that you were picking on them. Their name wasn't mentioned at all.
No.
So they know what they're doing. We know what they're doing. What's that saying? They're lying. They know we're lying. They know we know they're lying, but they keep lying. So it's just. You
All
gotta
right,
fight
let's
it.
get sunnier, John. in your role as
You're not gonna play another song, are you? 'Cause
no, that was awesome though, and Billy is not going to take that out. YouTube will probably
Anyway.
ban it. But anyway, seriously, what are your main priorities as vice chairman to kind of like the vice chairman in Reagan, and I know in you are going to be ideas people, right? So, what are the priorities for you in the next, CEC?
Same as it's always been for me. We got to bring structure to the party. We can't keep ruling by relationships. I've said when I first came into this party, half the CEC, or a larger percentage of CEC, if you found out a local politician had embezzled $1 million and he was dead to rights and he wrote a confession and everything, and you said, what should happen to him? The conservatives would say, throw the book at him.
Right.
There's the relationship people on the party would say, well, it depends on who it is. And that's the difference. So you got to have structure within the party to operate within to get away from all that. So as a great example right now, we have the chairman who wrote a threatening letter to sue one of the precinct chairmen for posting a sign saying the RVT was condemned for dirty electioneering.
Reagan, what would you
And
have
she-
done?
and she
One
put
second,
that
one second.
before the
I want
steering
Reagan to
committee.
jump in there. Reagan, if that happened to you and you were in John's role, what would you do?
Oh, you're going to put me on the
I want to put him on the spot.
Look, I
Rocking the boat, man.
I don't think that Ginger's sign was particularly effective, and her sign is not my style. But at the same time, I like most of what Brian's done. I think he's been a good chairman, but I don't think that he should have threatened to sue her. That was out of line. I mean,
Do you think he should have consulted with the party first? Or the legal
everybody-
counsel?
Everybody has
Steering committee.
Everybody has a First Amendment right. Ginger's got a First Amendment right
Yeah.
to say whatever, and so for Brian to threaten to sue her and chill her First Amendment
It's a party
free
plank.
speech rights.
It's a party rule too.
Yeah, I think he was wrong on that. And again,
What kind of
he
Mel-
should have consulted the CEC before sending out a
And
letter.
What
on
kind
behalf
of
the
sanction
party.
should he
hold on,
receive?
and the legal counsel.
Yes.
Without copying another outside legal counsel who was a financial contributor to that PAC that he was protecting, which by the way had all his wife's candidates on, so he has a financial interest. So the whole thing stinks. And so Ginger brought it to the steering committee. She wants a hearing on it. So I think this is a great opportunity to put some structure and process in place to deal with this sort of thing. If you don't, what happens next time is they go, well, that was the last biennium, we can do this again. We'll just intimidate and use a chair to do this again.
Right.
Needs to be something in place to do that. We need to put structure to the party. We need to modernize the party. We do need to come together behind the Republican principles. That's my goal.
So let me ask you, what are you proposing
That'd
to
be what I
do
said.
about what?
I'm not
Brian's-
proposing anything. We're going to let the steering committee hear it, and then they're going to make the decision. That's
You're
how
on
it
the
should
steering
work.
committee, right?
Right. That's right. It needs to go before the steering committee. There needs to be a process in place. And if I come up with a preconceived idea of what should happen and put it out there,
That's bad.
how is that justice?
No.
That's like a juror coming out and saying, well, I think the guy's guilty and we should do this, that, and other. I don't think that's the proper thing. There needs to be a remedy. Let the facts be known. Publish the facts. We don't want to go through another deal with Wally, where Wally was the facts he was putting out there weren't facts. They were just stuff designed to stir things up. We don't want to go through that again. Let's get the facts on the record. Let's let the steering committee make a decision. Let's get a process in place, and then we move forward from there.
See,
I'm listening.
If it were me, and this is just my opinion on the
Go
matter,
ahead.
like I said, he shouldn't have done that. But at this point, I don't really think that it accomplishes anything for the party to take any kind of action regarding
Sanction.
it.
And that may happen.
And especially, we're going into a general election now, and the whole focus needs to be on the party turning out the Republican vote for 2022. That needs to be the focus, and talking about this law threat or whatever, I just see as a distraction. It's really what I think, that there's a remedy. I think the remedy should be Brian and Kristen and Ginger and Calvin all go out to dinner together and talk this over. And
I think apologies are in
Let's just
order.
go.
You're assuming that they're honest brokers on that
Well-
side, and there's not.
Well,
So-
I don't think that dinner's going to happen. It's too much.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall.
I'd
if
love
it
to
did
see
that.
that.
I would like to, look, the steering committee will make a decision on this. It may come out to be just what you say. It may come out to be a formal letter of apology. I don't know what it might be. But something needs to happen, because in your case, in your scenario, dealing with these people, as much as I've dealt with them, They do this stupid thing. They know it's wrong. They get away with it. You admonish them for it, and then they do it again because there's nothing to keep them from doing it. So there needs to be something out there. And then they lie about what happened. You know, you can still hear this. You know, you guys did this and did that. None of it happened. But I'm just really tired of it. I just want to see some structure in the party. I want people to act like adults. And
I agree with you, but I agree with Reagan too. I think there's two things, and this is how I'm going to end the show.
Real politician.
Real politician. Me, I am a real politician because most real politicians get paid and are behind the scenes. Facts. They do things. Fact here. What you said was true, and what he said was true. The number one priority for all Republicans is to not let Beto O'Rourke become the governor of the state, not let somebody win in the attorney general's race at the state, because that's a big office, people. And we wouldn't want that when we're fighting the Biden administration.
But you don't ignore cancerous
I
problems. in
agree
your
with
party.
you too. I think that you have to
fix
have
those
clear
things.
rules, and I don't think we do right now. We don't have really any structure in the party on a lot of issues. I agree with you, but I also agree with Reagan. The primary focus of the Republican Party should be to win elections.
Amen.
Amen. And on that note, I think we rocked the boat pretty hard today, and Billy's looking like, whoa. He's
All right, folks, like, share, and subscribe.
very good. See you next time on Rock the Boat.
Can y'all edit me out of
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and ownership of MCPLive.tv.